Today, we're going to talk about design plans in ISD, what they are, and the 9 most common elements used. Stay with us. We're coming up. You have instructional design questions. We discuss answers. One of the first things I learned in one of the first courses I took as an ISD graduate student at UMBC from Chuck here is the importance of design elements in ISD. The elements that, in my mind, serve as a foundation for what's to come with everything that you're planning. Today, we're going to discuss the elements, the crucial elements in design plans. And I'm going to start Chuck off here with the question that I have in my mind, which is, can you walk us through what a design plan is in ISD?
Well, design plan is the foundation or the blueprint for everything you're going to do as you design a course or put together a program. It's a formal document. It's an accumulation of all the data that you've gathered. It's all of your ideas. It's all of your objectives. It's how you're going to evaluate learners. It's prerequisites for facilitators and learners. And in the rationale for a design plan, what you're doing is stating what you are going to accomplish. So I'm going to take this and turn it into that. It's a preamble. It's lots of things. It's the one part of a design plan that you will always share with clients and board of directors and all kinds of groups that don't need 3 hours on what your plan is. They need 15 minutes. And this is where you start. And the other thing it does is it provides a lot of confidence in folks that you work with. If you do this on the back of a napkin, it's never going to work. When you put together a design plan, and some of these honestly have been over 200 pages that I put together. These can be very short documents, 8-10 pages, or they can be exceptionally long. But the point being, this is your point of contact. This is your point of credibility and information. And as we look at the elements, you want to think to yourself, okay, well, maybe I've included that before. Maybe I didn't even think that belonged. And that's kind of the point of it. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to cover everything about your design.
Yeah, it sounds like it is one of those things that it sets the expectations up front for everybody who's involved in the process so that it takes the guesswork out and it allows for that freedom of information, that exchange of information as a living, breathing document.
And it has to be like that. I mean, there's so many things. If you think about a simple design, let's say you're going to put together a 1-hour class on a topic. Okay, maybe you don't need a design plan. But professional designers will spend years on a program. I mean, I spent 5 years designing a program in Egypt, and you can't do that unless you go to this level of detail. And the other thing that you'll find is professional designers know when a designer knows what they're doing. And one of the things that they will ask for in a process, if you're an interview or if you're looking at a promotion, is say, oh, show me your work, show me your portfolio. And if you can show someone a design plan has been fully fleshed out and contains all these elements and written in a way that makes sense from a design perspective, then you have a very valuable product.
Can you talk a little bit about what those most common elements are?
Sure, absolutely. You're going to start with a rationale. And a rationale is a statement of what you want to accomplish and why this is necessary. And when I teach rationale writing, I always make people come up with one thing that makes the point about why you're doing this. Convince me that this is the right thing to do. Convince me why I should spend my money or spend my time, or even as a student, why should I take this course? So a rationale sets out what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and what the end product is going to look at. And in my experience, this is the one product that a client or a board wants to see as you go through this initial relationship of building this course up and getting ready to really put designs together.
It sounds like a nice summary that they can absorb and discuss and be able to make decisions on quickly.
And the other thing it does for you as a designer, especially if you're working with clients, you want to make sure that everybody agrees on what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times designers have come to me and said, I thought we were all on the same page. I thought we all were going to try to do the one thing. And the client was happily whistling along, paying no attention, and they thought they were getting what they thought they were getting. And without this document, especially certain parts of it, you know,
Yeah.
I've seen it not end well for people that don't take the time.
Nothing worse than wasting your time or wasting other
Oh,
people's time. So
or their money.
or their money. Gosh, yes,
Yeah, they
money
really
talks.
don't like that. Yes.
As the 5 P's of marketing, proper planning prevents poor performance.
I
So
couldn't even say that.
I have been saying that
I
for
can't do P words.
I have been saying that for 20 years, and it's a good thing I have a pop filter on my mic because it'd probably get a little messy. In all honesty.
Well, but I mean, it's the whole notion of each field. I mean, that's a perfect example. Each field has its own set of things, right? So here are the guidelines, here are the goalposts, here are the things you got to do each time. And I think that your example of marketing is perfect. And this is what a design plan does. I can't imagine a professional designer that doesn't do these. And let's look at some of the other elements too, because I mean, the rationale is where you start.
Right.
But another key element of this is where you put your objectives for your course, your terminal enabling objectives for your entire course. So if your course is an hour, it's 10, 15 objectives. If your course is 6 months or a year, I have seen and I have written plans where we had hundreds of pages of nothing but objectives. And I know to the uninitiated that seems silly, but put yourself in a position of putting together a course for a nuclear power plant operator. Okay, to be certified to be able to do that work, you have to go through sometimes years of training and be certified. Can you imagine writing an objective for each component part of each skill that operator needs to be able to demonstrate mastery of?
Right.
So you think about, okay, maybe instructional design is a lot more than I thought it was. This is really about years and years of work to put together programs that people will use for lifetimes. So you have to have objectives. They've got to be in there. And related to objectives are evaluations. So unless you have a plan for evaluation, you got nothing. You have to be able to show mastery. You have to be able to prove that people can meet your objectives. We call this performance agreement, but in this sense, it's just the plan for objectives and evaluation. So that has to be here. Then we get into the more subtle arts of prerequisites. So each learner has to have a set of prerequisites per course. You also need to have prerequisites for facilitators, because if you don't, you just want anybody teaching your courses. I mean, anybody that's been in certain larger environments know that there's a team of instructors that may teach every course that comes out. Or you may have a situation where you have no control over who's going to instruct a course that you design. And you want to set the standards for this. So do you want to have people that have demonstrated the ability to facilitate? Do you want to have a certain level of content knowledge? Do you want that to be demonstrated? Do you want that to be accredited? And this is one aspect of this process that is overlooked, and sadly, because many poorly instructed courses could be done well because they're designed well if they had the right instructor. So prerequisites. The other things you need to think about are deliverables. Okay, what do you need to produce and prepare for this process, whether it's a course or a project? And one other thing you need to think about is you need to be able to describe what this course and program are going to look like. So in a course description, you're going to lay out exactly what your ideas are and how you're going to deliver this. How are you going to implement this course? Online, classroom, blended, what teaching methods are you going to use? How many people are going to be in a classroom if it's a classroom? What's your seating arrangement? All these details that lots of people don't think about until they actually stand in front of the group have to be part of a professional design plan.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And going to the whole deliverable part in terms of the room setup and understanding what's needed, because that kind of stuff, I mean, from event planning, from my purview of event planning, if I didn't plan those things out in advance, there's a big surprise waiting for me at the event when I have 300 people staring at me and I don't have a microphone.
Well, I had a perfect example of this. One of my students, who I care very dearly about, put together a course for senior citizens on healthcare. It's going to be delivered across an entire state. And what he or she had not thought about was that this audience cannot see well or hear well. So there was no plan for people to be able to view the videos or be able to hear these things, or in fact hear the instructor.
Mm.
And some of these, were community-based events, which you might have 50 or 100 people. So the first time it implemented, I got a call. I should have paid attention to this whole course description thing because he completely fell apart.
Oh,
And
that's
it was a tremendous course, but it's the little things that always do you in. Okay, if you don't have gas in the car, you're not driving to Nevada. And
yeah.
it's the details in design, detail, 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 and then detail on the detail. And this is where you find that out. And I can
Hmm.
guarantee if you do a course description, you will find everything that you thought you already knew, but hadn't told anybody or hadn't planned for.
Yeah, that's the little simple details sometimes add up to the biggest messes if you're not paying attention to that detail. It's all in that fine detail with anything in life.
Well, and the point is with instructional design, you're talking about a whole world of things. Everybody thinks instructional design is just standing in front of a classroom or getting behind a screen and teaching a course, and that's about 1% of it. In fact, good designers never teach courses anyway. They're too busy designing.
Mm.
I teach almost nothing. I only teach instructional design and a couple of other things because I enjoy them. But I would say 99% of the things I've designed, I never implemented myself. I never taught myself. So I have to put myself in a position of, okay, if I was that instructor or I was that learner, what are the things that are real about me? Okay. I mean, sometimes simple things like making sure you have coffee or making sure the restrooms are open. I've had
Absolutely. There's got to be the
sites
coffee
where they
flowing.
lock the restrooms, and I thought, well, this is going to be an interesting half a day. It's all these checklists, 24-hour checklists, morning of checklists. It's all part of this plan.
Yeah, the
Design
checklist.
is not just teaching. It's not just one thing. It's 100 things.
One thing I wanted to ask you about with the elements, one thing I got confused about when taking a course recently is the target population and the participant prerequisite. To me, at first, they seemed so similar.
Hmm.
And my professor at the time said a lot of people mistake them for being very similar. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about what distinguishes the two, the important
Sure.
critical factors that distinguish those two?
Well, what you're going to do if you're a good designer and you have the budget to do it is you're going to analyze your population. So you spend a lot of time figuring out who these people are. And every client I've ever worked with said they know their population perfectly. I don't need to spend money on that. And then I start laughing. And when I recover from that episode, we talk reality because you don't know your population. Your population can change from this morning to this afternoon. And depending on the content, your population will change too. So when we talk about population, this is a snapshot of the people that are going to take your course or be in your program or part of your project. And the things you think about as you do a population are the simple things, but you have to think about them. What's the education level? What's language fluency? What's L1? What's your native language? What's your skill level? Literacy. One thing I found in programs that was the most ignored, I guess, aspect of it was literacy in a population of learners. And they're all ready to put together pamphlets and brochures and have them read books, and they're not functionally literate. And
Mm.
it's so unfair to the learner to not do this step. So even if you think you know this population, you don't know this population until you know this population. So you gather the information, and many times you find out that you need 2 courses or 3 courses on the same content because you have different levels of proficiency. So when you look at populations, you have to think about where they are on the continuity scale from novice to expert. And you can have the same content level. And one of my best examples of this is when I was very early in my career teaching software packages. And I was teaching WordPerfect, I think, which still exists, but 3 people use it. And
Word perfect. Yes,
yeah, you remember that one?
I
Boy, that was a
do.
classic. So anyway, this organization decided that everybody was going to take WordPerfect classes. And of course, this population didn't need WordPerfect classes because most of them didn't use word processors. But among this group were IT people and programmers who had to sit through this course. So I had projected media was showing this up on the front of the room, and there's 30 people at computers, and I'm teaching them WordPerfect. And all of a sudden I hear everybody laughing. and I turn around and there are baby pictures of me flashing up on the screen because one of the programmers had gotten into something and now decided to have fun with me. So here were pictures of my younger life, and I think there's a picture when I was a guitarist that flashed up there. And it was at this point that I understood that I need to talk to them about populations. We do not need these people in this course. If we are going to do something nice for them, let's find another course that works for them. It's not WordPerfect. And this is what you have. Even when it's not funny like this, because I was laughing so hard I'd sit down, because you know me, I laugh more at me than I do anybody. But it was this whole notion, okay, I now wasted, 20 people's time for 8 hours. Why do we want to do that? It's not productive. So I think when you look at populations and then you think about prerequisites, there's a perfect marriage here, but they're two different things. So in this case, let's look at this very varied population of people that have to take this basic software course. So if I'm looking at prerequisites, I'm going to say, okay, it has to have, minimum knowledge. Needs to be able to use a mouse, demonstrate use of a mouse, should be able to start a software program. And that's it. Now, if I want to step this up, I want to say, okay, well, we're going to do very advanced things in WordPerfect. We're going to do lists and mail merges and whatever else you might do. So a prerequisite, that would be, okay, at least 1 year's experience with basic WordPerfect, the ability to be able to gather data, download files, etc. So now you see your population start to go into these different categories. And that's where you get into prerequisites. So if you have a very advanced course, your prerequisite is going to be pretty strong, right? You can have demonstrated ability to do X or certification in X. In grad school, you have to have an undergrad degree. These are all prerequisites.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense now, the way you just explained it. Perfect sense. And what I really liked, the word that I really liked you used for the target population that helps me is it's a snapshot. I can see that in my mind now. I understand that. And so thank you for explaining that. That really was very helpful.
As you look at it, the important thing is to remember this population will change. If I do an entire population of 35,000 people this week, it'll be a little different next week. And it would have been different if I'd have done it a week ago. And this gets into different aspects of ISD. We call it decay of data. And, some of the high-end things we're going to cover in courses later as we go through this. But the notion is there is no stagnant product. There's no static product. People change. And can you imagine trying to do a population a year ago before the pandemic, or what we would look at now? We have different populations. We'd have different ways people feel about their exchange of information as a student. And you should always look at these as snapshots. This is what it looked like on this date. That's all I can promise you. And, if we need to redo it, we'll redo it. But, I got to have that static, stable product to work with.
I think that this is a great segue into wrapping it up. You've explained it so nicely. And do you have any final thoughts on the subject before we close out today's session?
Well, I think one thing, if you're watching this and you've never done design work, look at this as kind of the outline of the work that you will do as a designer. If you're an accomplished designer, ask yourself, are these the things that I do now? Is this how I prepare to design a course? You can write up a design plan in an hour. But have I thought about all these things? Have I really set prerequisites for things that are important to me? Do I have real objectives? Do I have real evaluation tasks to look at mastery? And have I explained this in a way that someone who doesn't know about ISD can look at this and appreciate what I'm trying to accomplish? And I think those things would be very helpful for people.
I want to say thank you for everyone for tuning in today. We really appreciate you being here. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or any suggestions for future topics, please drop them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.